Okay, so in this video, in this part of the lecture, we're going to go over the masking and what masks are and how to use them, or how to start using them, and kind of conceptually what they mean. Okay, so we talked about selections, and in the last one, we did this little guy here, where we have this layer on top that has an image. You can still see in the thumbnail, you can see the original image. Then it has this little black and white mask on it. And if you kind of paying attention to that, you can see that the green part in the thumbnail is not visible here, but it's analogous to the black part in the mask. So a mask is simply a, I like to call it a map of transparency. All right, so you can see it's attached to this layer right here. Let's look at the mask. So this is the mask itself, and I did that by holding the Option key and clicking on the mask itself. That opens the mask. Okay. So the mask is a map of transparency. So it's black and white. We're not seeing black and white in our image, right? We're seeing the figure on the background. The mask tells me on this layer, I want this part, the white part, to be visible. I want the black part to be hidden. Okay. The gray parts become translucent. All right. So let's take a look at a kind of another way of looking at that. I'm going to open up a new window here. Let's make a I don't know. Let's paint a big green circle, like so. Let's make a new layer and paint a big pink shape. Purple. How about purple? All right. So now if we look at my layers here, I have this green circle on a white background. I have a purple dot on a clear background. Now, if I wanted to selectively erase part of this, there's ways I could do it. Lots of ways I can do this. Remember Photoshop? There's 15 different ways you can do everything. The most obvious way you might think of is, okay, I want to take the eraser and I want to go and erase some of these pixels. Make it look like purple Pac-Man's eating a green power pill. So I literally went and erased the pixels. You can see in the thumbnail that those pixels are gone. All right. That's not always the best way to work. Number one, erasing like that is, you know, I just really drew it in by hand. It's not the right way to go. When you erase those pixels, they're gone. They're gone for good. Now, if I step back, obviously, I can get them back. But once I save this document, I lose my ability to go back in time, and the pixels are gone. Okay? And one of the joys of working digitally is that it is non-destructive. If you work correctly, you can always go back and readjust something later on. Okay? So, where am I going with this? Well, what does this have to do with masks? Well, I said a minute ago, mask is a map of transparency. So we can do this without getting rid of those pixels. So let's step back here. Let's look at this top layer, layer 1, and let's put a mask on it. Down at the bottom of the layer panel, you're going to see all these icons. I've been using a couple of them, like new layers, the page icon with the turn corner. The trash can is the trash is the trash can. Over here in this area is the mask icon. You just have to remember what it is. It's a circle on a black circle on a white background. So I have my layer selected. I'm going to click on that, and you're going to see that pops up a mask. You can tell the mask it's a mask because it's a rectangle that's got a little chain next to it locked to the layer thumbnail, and it always sits just to the right. Notice I can click back and forth, click on the mask, it highlights around that, and I click on the layer, and it highlights there. So I can click back and forth. That tells me which one's active, which one's not active. So if I come over here and I grab my paintbrush again, I can, well, that's the eraser. If I grab my paintbrush again, I can still paint in the layer, and you can see it adds to that, okay? I'm not doing anything. But if I come over here into the mask section, grab my paintbrush, paint out, what I'm doing there is I'm painting in the mask. So I'm manipulating the mask itself, right? And you can see that with the little black mark in there. So if I go to look at the mask, my mask now looks like that, right? So I've told this layer, say, okay, you are a purple dot on a clear background, but this section is not going to be visible. All right, you guys following me on this? So the map, just the mask is a map of kind of what's visible, what's not visible. So in this case, the white area shows, the black area cuts through. Another way to think about this is sort of cutting through the layer to reveal what's underneath. So it's kind of a conceptual thing. You just have to wrap your brain around it. This only affects everything down underneath the layers, okay? So this shows through what's underneath. Doesn't matter if that's on top, just underneath. All right, let's go. Any questions right now? Right. So that's the basics of a mask. Now we can do all sorts of fun stuff with this. Let's go back to here. So here we can see that our mask is already there from our selected mask process. It's a nice fancy mask. We got all our detail in it. We can do all sorts of interesting things. And I'm going to introduce something called an adjustment layer right now. Okay, so it's the first thing we're going to do that has to do with masks. So we can create masks by hand. We can create them by the selected mask process. We can create them by all sorts of different things. The next later I'll show you how to paste other images in as a mask. You can do some cool stuff with that. But right now let's talk about adjustment layers. All right. I told you this is going to be a little bit complex. Right? But remember, it all relates. You just got to get in there and kind of play with everything. If you've ever used Photoshop before, you might be familiar with adjustment layers. You might not. You might be familiar with the adjustments section of the image menu. That allows you to do stuff like change the color balance of an image, right? So I can come in here and I can tint my whole image, well, or what's on that layer. So if I wanted this a little more cooler, I could come in and tint that, right? Like that. Or since she's on Mars, maybe I want her to go a little more to the red, so she looks like she's on the red planet. Be a little more orange red, like that. And that's a way to make some adjustments like that. Okay, so there's that. Up in here, there's a whole bunch of them. You know, if I wanted to change it to black and white, I could do that. There's all this stuff in here. Now these are great. These are useful. But once again, these are things that change the pixels of that layer. They're permanent. They you can't kind of replicate them. You can't. There's not a lot of nuance to it as to how they get applied. Okay, they kind of get applied to the layer, and that's it. So we have this other thing that we can use called an adjustment layer. And that is usually in this window here. You have these little icons. It's called adjustments. Now watch what happens when I click on one of these. Let's go to our hue saturation adjustment. Okay. You're going to see that all of a sudden I get a new layer with a mask built into it. Okay, it's got this little funny icon, little adjustment icon, instead of a layer thumbnail, but it's a mask and an adjustment. That means an adjustment. So now if I come up here to hue, when I adjust it, it completely changes the entire image. Okay.
What button was it that created that new layer?
In adjustments, hue saturation. Okay. So since I have this selected, I get the properties in the property window, and that allows me to change this. So I can come up, oversaturate it, completely desaturate it, make it lighter, make it darker. There's a lot of stuff we're going to work with this in a little bit. Hue saturation. But that gives me a mask that affects everything under it. So remember, the mask indicates visibility of that thing to layers underneath it. Right now, this adjustment is affecting everything under it because it's black and because it's white. If I paint in this mask, let's make this a little more obvious. I'm going to change it to blue. If I come in here with a brush, a black brush, I can start to paint that out. You have to be working in the mask itself. So you see now my thumbnail has this shape. Okay, I painted out that. This adjustment only affects what the white area is. Okay, you follow me there? So let me step back a second and I'll kind of show you another way of kind of doing this. So I'm going to grab this layer just by clicking and dragging. I'm going to throw it away, put it in the trash. Let's look at this mask we already have. We already have a good mask of her. So there's a very quick way to make a selection from a mask you already have. So masks and selections go hand in hand. They're part and parcel of the same thing, right? It's another way of conceptualizing a selection. So if I just hold the Option key, oops, sorry. If I hold the Command key and click on this mask, you're going to see the icon changes. That converts my mask into a selection. Now if I go to the Adjustments panel, click on Hue Saturation, you notice it makes a mask with the thing that I already selected. So now if I do this, I'm just going to affect her.
I'm sorry, what button was that again?
The Command key.
Okay.
On a Windows machine, it is something else. Sorry, I can never keep it straight. Like the Alt key or something.
So you command on the mask.
You hold the Command key and click on the mask. And what that does is that converts the mask to a selection. The selection, when you have something selected, and then you make a new adjustment layer, it only affects that part you have selected. It makes a new mask based on that selection. Here, I'll show you again with another type of selection. Let's grab a elliptical marquee. Play around with your modifier keys. If I hold Option and Shift, I can drag a circle out that stays perfect from the center. So if I grab that selection there, so I have a selection, and I go and make another adjustment layer, it's literally only going to affect what's on the circle. Okay. So you're starting to see how you can kind of combine these things together. Masks, here, selections, adjustments, and we can start to do some fancy stuff. Now remember, anytime I want, I can go in and paint this mask. Now so far, I've only painted it in black and white. Okay, I've used the black brush, select the mask, I've gone in, and I can change that mask. Take parts away from it.
So right now you're on the mask.
I'm on the mask.
And then before we
I just did a selection on the in the space. And if I paint white, I can add to that mask. Okay, is this making sense? If I do gray, you're going to see that it's a little bit lighter. Whoops. Am I on the right one? Yeah. Huh.
Excuse me.
That's not supposed to work that way. Yeah.
So how are her eyes still, like the outside of her eyes still white?
Because this hue saturation is only affecting the color. It tries to keep the lighter values. It doesn't like make them blue. It keeps them very light. Does that make sense? You can see her hair is still dark, but everything has a blue tint to it. But if I click this button here, now it's affecting everything. I haven't really gotten to that part now. That nuances that colorizing. Yeah, but it's only affecting. It affects the midtones the most. Okay. That's weird. Well, I'll figure out why that is. Yeah, it's still working. So what a gray does is, you can see here, the gray makes it less. So black, black means it's not going to show. White means it is going to show. Gray means it's only going to show some when it's in the mask itself. I know it's a little hard to wrap your brains around. You got to play with it till you get it, but it's okay.
I'm a little confused, but what do you mean with black, white, gray, green?
In the masks.
Yeah,
Okay. You notice there's no color in the mask. Mask is just a range of value from black to white.
So when you click that, how did you get that color palette up? Like
This color palette here?
Like when you click the mask section, you get the black and the white. Yeah. Oh, it's white. Okay.
So the layer panel here. So we have this is an adjustment layer, right? So it doesn't have any image information in it. It just has an adjustment information in it. So it has a mask that tells where the adjustment is applied to in relationship to the rest of the image. So if I command click on the mask, that's my mask image. Okay. So this black and white and gray image, all this does is tell the adjustment kind of where to apply it. Okay, but the black part, it doesn't apply it at all. The white part, it applies it at 100%, and the gray is somewhere in between, depending on the value of the gray. All right, does that kind of make sense? Here, I can show you another way of kind of conceptualizing this, or another way of kind of seeing it.
And you go in that little palette box right there.
Well, yeah, this is just a hue saturation adjustment layer. There's all sorts of different adjustments. We'll look at some of them in a second, but let me show you another way of kind of seeing this. I'm going to make a, I like using the hue saturation because it's easy to see. I'm going to go into the mask image, and I'm going to make a gradient from black to white. So if we look at a mask now, so this is my mask now. It goes just from black to white. Okay, and it's a nice smooth gradient. So it's got every shade of gray in there. If I go back to my image and I adjust this color here, you're going to see it goes from fully saturated change all the way back to nothing. as far as the change goes. Is this making a little bit more sense? So the mask is useful in that way. So let me show you an example of how you might use this whole masking thing. Okay. Let's go back to this, go over to this image here. So I've got this nice image of this girl on a bike. Let's say I wanted to do something cool for my, my friend to hang on a wall. And you ever seen those images? They're black and white images, and they're kind of hand colored with a pencil or something like that. Well, here's a quick way to kind of do that effect on here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an adjustment layer to this. A black and white adjustment layer like that. And I can come in and I can kind of tweak this and get the black and white just like I like it by kind of playing with these sliders. I won't go into what this is all doing, but you can see these sliders kind of affect different areas. So what I have now is I have an image there. I have a black and white adjustment layer applied to it that has a mask on it. So let's leave this all black and white, and then bring her dress back. Bring that nice pink dress back. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to click on the mask. I'm going to grab my black paintbrush, and I'm simply going to start. Remember, I'm painting the mask now. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just painting the mask. I'm going to start painting this back. And I can come in with a smaller brush, get that edge. Like so. Now I'm doing this by hand because you can, because there's not a lot of detail in this. And it's really kind of easy to kind of do this way. If this were much more complex, I would come in first and do a select and mask on this, and I would get a good mask of the dress. Then apply that mask to the adjustment layer. Now you can see I'm making mistakes there. It's fine. And it's okay for me to make mistakes because everything that's in a mask is completely adjustable. I can throw it away at any time. I can go back. I can paint it. I can copy it, paste it. I can do all sorts of stuff to it. Okay. So you see maybe in here where I went outside, all I got to do is flip my brush back and adjust that back. Now, if I kind of want to see what I've done, see if I missed any area, I can come over here. I can option click into my mask, fix those areas there. So you can paint either way. So now I have this sort of hand-tinted kind of photograph. There's lots I could do with this to make it more interesting, but this gives you an idea. So what I did, very simply, was I have an image. I applied a black and white filter to the whole image, the black and white adjustment layer. And then I told the computer, I said, apply that black and white adjustment layer to everything but this area I painted out. Okay? It's kind of the base of the mask itself. All right? So that gives you a kind of an idea there of how to do that. Let me show you real quick. I'm going to let you jump in here and start. Let me show you real quick kind of how to do this in the reverse. Okay. So let's go. let's go into here. I'm going to delete this mask. So I have an image here. Black and white portrait. These two, soldier and his lady friend. Ah, come on. Zoom. Now, I want to do something like start to colorize this. Okay, how do I start? I start by making a selection. Okay, I'm going to start with something easy. I'm going to start with this hat. Okay, so remember, you're going to use all these processes. Selections, masks, and adjustment layers to do this. The three things I've gone over today. I'm going to start with something easy, and I can probably use a quick selection tool for this, and just go right over his hat like that. That's going to give me a pretty good selection, all right? If I zoom in here, I can see there's probably a little bit more there I want. So I can grab my lasso tool, hold my shift key, and I can just kind of draw that in and add to that. Remember to use the combination of those tools. So this just gets the underside of that hat just a little bit. Okay. So I've got that. Remember what I said. I said when you have a selection and you use an adjustment layer, you can apply an adjustment layer that only applies to that piece that you have selected. All right, it's going to automatically make a mask for you. So I'm going to go over here to hue saturation, like that. Now you're going to notice that when I adjust this, it doesn't do anything because it's black and white. It only affects the color area at first unless you click colorize. So now I can drag that out, and I would imagine that a hat on an army hat probably looks somewhere kind of greenish brownish, right? Something like that. And I can adjust the saturation. I find that desaturated tends to work a little bit better. Tends to look, I mean, you're not going to fool anyone like this. You're just going to add some depth to the image like that. And you can go a little darker if you want, a little lighter. But you notice I have some detail here that I probably don't want to be that color. So I can click into my mask, zoom in, and I can paint that back out. And I can do that in a number of ways. So I see this, you see this band here? I don't want that same color. So I'm going to, let's just use the lasso tool. I'm going to lasso this out like this. Like that. Let's adjust that a little bit. Adjust that a little bit. Oops. Let's try that. Something like that. Now, if I have that selection available there, I can go right back to my mask, grab the black brush. I can paint that back out gray. Come back, do another adjustment layer, another colorizing layer. Go in and colorize that. That's probably not, purple would not be the color for that. Maybe something like that. So you can see I'm already starting to do that. So now I have two layers. They're hue saturation. You can't really see anything on that one because it's kind of small. But if I click into those, that's the mask. That's that mask. And that applies that color detail to there. Yeah.
So just to review, you went back to the original image, made the, like for the band, you made the selection in there, then went to the mask, deleted that, and then made a new mask from that.
Yes.
Okay.
So this gives you a lot of room to adjust these things. Yeah.
So if you were to like
Right now, that will not hamper anything, okay? Because they're actually not in the same spot. Does that make sense? Inside the space there?
Oh, so it's still showing.
Yeah, so it'll still show. Now you're right. Once things get more complicated, they'll start interfering with each other. Okay, so you have to be careful about that. So if I did his whole code in one color and then went back and did the band in one color, it would sort of combine those two colors over top of each other because they'd be sitting on the color information would be sitting on top of each other. So yeah, it gets complicated. It gets complicated fast. But this should be enough to get you started. Okay, this process. Let me show you where to go to get this stuff. So you're going to go in here to here. Either of these things. So you can go in here. These are a bunch of collections of old images. So you can go in and look at this stuff. Don't just grab the image there. Come down and find the JPEG like that. You should be able to either click on the download button or right click and save link as. Okay, or saved link file. There's different ways of doing it depending on your browser. But you can look through these things, find one that's fun to use. Don't all use the same one. Use a portrait, gives you a little bit of feel for how to do this. And the other one is much more bigger archive. So if you go up here to search, and search for portrait, you'll get much more stuff to see portrait-wise, play with. So that's enough to get you guys started. I'll do another kind of talk on the kind of the next steps a little bit later. Any other questions? Final questions? All right. Let me stop this video.